Hey everyone, and happy Training Tuesday. I am Heidi Reese, the Training Programs Manager for Dayton Superior. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out to attend our training. It is on a summertime best practices, so maybe you're just trying to get out of the heat. I don't know about you, but Ohio is too warm for being Ohio right now. And take it from a Florida girl, that's something to be said. Although it did cool down a little bit into the high 70s, so I'll take that. Just wanted to let you know before we get started, go over a couple housekeeping rules like we always do. Just want to remind you that everyone who has joined the call has joined muted, but I don't want that to stop you from asking any questions throughout or having conversations with me as Chuck is presenting or whatever. You can do that through the Zoom functionality of either the Q&A or the chat functionality, and we can definitely have a Q&A at the very end, a very brief one at the end of the presentation, and get any answers that you might have questions for. Or maybe I said that wrong. You get the idea. All right. So just also want to remind you that we record every one of these, and then we put them out on our Dayton Superior YouTube channel, as well as DaytonSuperior.com. If you just search for Training Tuesday, you can find the latest to sign up for, as well as another link with all of the ones that are out there, and we've got them organized for you by the top four that we've done most recently, as well as by the product type. So if you're into bridge deck, you can go and see all the bridge deck or the precast or the tilt up or the chemicals. You got it. You name it. As a reminder, again, this presentation is intended for training purposes only, so I want you to go out to DaytonSuperior.com. If there's any products that we've mentioned here, it's very important to look at the technical specifications, whether they be TDSs, the technical data sheets, or the safety data sheets, or the application guides. They're all out there by the product for DaytonSuperior.com, and you can read them and see the safety instructions. So real quick, who is Dayton Superior? We are the leading provider of engineered solutions. So not only the products of accessories, chemicals, and forming, but we can handle the engineering for you. Or we can provide you with the tools such as the software that you can utilize to do the engineering yourself. And also for training, Chuck and I and a whole bunch of experts, him being the leader of the bunch, are there for your training needs. And you can contact us at training@daytonsuperior.com. Once again, training@daytonsuperior.com. And just shoot us a little note, tell us what you might need, and we'll get back with you and figure it all out and get it going. So I talked about us being the leader in the engineered solutions, and I just briefly went over the products. Well, here are the levels of them: accessories, chemicals, forming, and all of the product lines, such as Aztec or AccuBrace, Tiltworks, you name it here. Forming and shoring, they are very adaptable with each other. You know, Maxiform, steel ply, all that can go together and do what they need to do. And then the chemicals, liquids, powders, epoxies, you can do repair and restoration. We have top casts as well. They're all out here. So we are that one-stop shop providing the customer with what they need from bid to build. Okay, let's get to the good stuff. We're here for summertime concrete practices. You heard me yakking about how hot I was. Great, right? So when the temperature gets warms, job site practices needs to change. So here with us to talk us through how to make those changes and the best practices of it is Mr. Chuck Hoke, my near and dear friend who he always is working with me, whether he likes it or not. I hope you're giggling, Chuck, because there it is. But he's going to talk to us. He's been around the block or two. That sounds, funny, but he has been in the industry a long time. So he really has been out there doing the work, not just reading about it and spouting it back to you. He's been on the job site. He knows the stuff. He talks to so many different networking people. I mean, half the time when I'm, in the office listening to his conversations, it's really funny, and I try to figure out who he's talking to. My point is that he gets the networking down there, so he knows his stuff. So get your questions ready, and he's going to answer it. Chuck, have at it, mister.
All right. Well, thank you, Heidi. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about summertime practices for concreting. We've had sessions like this before, talk about cold weather. Well, it just seems fitting, especially with the recent weather we've had for the last 2, 3 weeks. and what's coming in the next couple of weeks, heading back to it, you know, hot weather is here. It seems that a lot of the country is actually seeing much higher temperatures in place here. And so what is hot weather? Well, hot weather is defined from ACI. 305R is the report that actually came out that directs on how to weather or how to handle concrete in warm weather. So it's when higher ambient temperatures, low relative humidity, obviously wind speed will play a factor in this, and high concentrate temperature. Um, you all know typically when you pour concrete in certain areas of the country, you have hot spots where either the sun doesn't get reflected or gets absorbed into the soils and conditions. You're going to end up with higher temperatures for either surface temperatures or actually during the actual whole process. And obviously you've got solar radiation now playing effect in developing issues with pouring concrete. So typically there's a wide range of difficulties. This ACI 305R, if you haven't got a copy of it, give us a call. I can forward it over to you. It's I think it's about a 6 or 8 page PDF. It's actually a very good read, and has some actually good information in it. So evaporation rate. Biggest problem we have with evaporation rate is obviously sun, solar temperature, air temperature, and wind speed. All three of those products actually, or those conditions actually make up for increased evaporation rates in our concrete that we're pouring. So typically higher temperatures, obviously, the warmer the temperature, the faster it's going to set up. So you have to be very cautious within that realm to make sure what you're looking at. So obviously, you got to look at the relative humidity. If low humidity actually is going to suck the moisture out of the concrete. Concrete temperature is obviously a factor. If a concrete load shows up already starting to set up, you're in trouble. There's not a whole heck of a lot, especially with the temperatures that we've been seeing here. Air temperature, obviously, it plays a factor, as obvious, and also as wind speed, as we talked about here. So, what happens when it's hot? Well, the slump of the concrete changes. The slump is the consistency of that concrete mix. Typically, you have to have increased water demand for the concrete mix is required in warm weather. Problem is that also leads to a couple of things. If you have to maintain a water cement ratio, if you don't increase the water, you're going to end up with a stiffer mix, decrease the workability with it, and weaker bonds between the concrete and reinforcement. Challenges that you'll see here, cold joints, especially where concrete is already, you poured in the concrete, you poured a lift of concrete in your form, and you come back and pour the next lift. Well, you already found that initial lift is already starting to set. Matter of fact, I was on the job earlier actually it was late last week, and the contractor truck showed up for the job. First truck came in fine. Second truck came in with a hot load on it, and the material, when it came out of the truck, looked like a mess. Realistically, they threw that load of concrete away just because it was so thick and so. We're talking. It was probably a 1-inch to half-inch slump. That material was that thick and that hard when it came out of the truck. So those are things that the contractors are facing today, especially with the current temperatures. Well, how do you take care of that? Well, you can add moisture. And that's what most contractors do. As soon as the truck shows up on site, the first thing they're doing is they're giving the signal to the driver to add some water, increase the workability. Well, that does a couple of different things. You have to worry about removing the reducing the water cement ratio, so you're actually reducing the strength of the concrete itself. Now, if there's not enough moisture though within the surface of the concrete, the bleed water can come off the surface. With that higher moisture loss within the concrete itself, you can actually cause tinsel cracks, or basically crazing on the top of the concrete. You have to worry about shrinkage cracks actually taking place here, where water will be evaporating too fast for anything to be set up. So these are all challenges that you've got to look at moving forward. So say no to cracks. How are you going to protect the concrete? Well, there are products you can add to the concrete mix. And that's one of the most crucial things you can do, is actually work with your ready mix company to actually increase either the pozzolans or the plasticizers within the concrete mix to make it a little bit more user friendly and workable in warm weather situations. There are also things like evaporation retarders, similar to the J74 Aquafilm. You can actually cover the concrete after, as soon as you finish striking it off and screed it and finish it, you can cover it with plastic to actually help reduce the amount of hydration within that surface of the concrete. I'm not a big fan of plastic covering. I would rather do a damp burlap. Plastic sheeting has a tendency to discolor concrete, especially if you get a ripple in the plastic itself. You'll end up with different curing going on in different areas, and you'll end up with discoloration of the concrete. You can avoid sunlight if possible. If you know, I tell that to people, but usually when you're doing, especially on some of these big tilt jobs, one thing about a big tilt job, there's not usually a whole lot of shade anywhere around a tilt wall job. Those projects are typically large warehouses that have large areas that have been cleared off, so that it is wide open. So it is getting hot sun from 9 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. It's just not going away. There's no way you can avoid it. But you try to avoid or slow down, going to make your concrete pours. You can actually pour a little bit at night. You see more and more contractors are actually pouring now from 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the morning when it's cooler air temperatures. You can avoid high winds during the process at any cost. Use a windbreak if you have to. Air entrainment. A lot of guys look at it as a problem within the concrete itself. Typically, you see this, usually it's a northern half of the country product line. You're going to see a 4 to 7% mix of air entrainment in the concrete in the northern half of the country, more closer to the 4%. It was usually, initially, air entrainment was put in the concrete to actually help in the freeze thaw. So those areas that are prone to freeze thaw, across the board here, you see they'll have a 4% air entrainment in the ready mix, no matter what. If you go to higher temperatures, it makes that little bit of air entrainment makes it difficult to control the concrete itself. It actually reduces the workability and plausibility of using an air entrainment. within the concrete. So you're going to actually make adjustments within your concrete mix design to ensure proper entrainment, air entrainment. Best practices for combating: 1, adjust the concrete mix. Slow down the setting process, improve workability with retarders, water reducers, air entrainment, add mixtures. Use a concrete consistency that will allow for rapid placement and consolidation. Uh, Typically, if you look at most contractors like a floor slab, if you're pouring a flat slab, you're talking a 7-inch consistency. Well, guys will actually put in where they'll have a little bit more plasticizer in there, making that product a little more fluid so it can be moved easily within the system, be set up so they can actually, once it gets to a point where they get it struck up, they can actually hit it with the trowel, steel trowel, and get the curing on top of it quicker and easier. Adjust the water content. Water is necessary. You have to have hydration. So, but be careful with that. There is a fine line between enough water and too much water. Excessive water can lead to shrinkage cracks and reduce concrete strength. Monitor your slump to avoid adding extra water unnecessarily. So typically, if you get a mix that shows up on site, and like I said, the superintendent usually will end up signaling he wants water added right away to make the concrete flow a little better. Well, you want to make sure when that material shows up that that little bit of water is actually needed. So you want to check it before you actually start adding the water for adjustments of your water content. In this weather here, I've seen guys throwing bags of ice in the concrete mix, trying to cool the aggregates down. Guys will throw full bags of, even if they're from the ready mix company contractors, the ready mix guys will actually throw water. Instead of throwing water in, they'll throw ice cubes in, just to kind of cool the aggregates and everything as it's being transported from the ready mix plant to the job site. An 18-degree increase in concrete temperature can decrease the set time as much as 2 hours within the concrete mix. So try to keep your concrete temperature between 77 and 95. I like to try to keep it down around, in the mid 80s is actually ideal. That typically is going to give you time to basically get on the concrete once the bleed water is off, get your steel troweling in, once that bleed water is off, then you can hit it with a curing, and you're not rushing around here. A big consideration this is make sure you have enough help on site to actually accommodate the concrete pour. Optimize timing. Like I said, I have in the last 3-4 years, it's been almost every time you see they're pouring concrete earlier and earlier in the morning, 3 in the morning. You're getting out to seeing that the contractors want to start earlier. Work with your ready mix companies, your distributors, etc., to handle those early morning pours so that if you do have to have early morning pours, and you have to have access to, a curing, whatever, that you have that all ready to go and all set for you to actually work. Avoid long exposure times. Minimize the time between mixing and placing the concrete. Hopefully you don't have a ready mix truck that shows up on site. You're dumping the first one, and while you're dumping the first one, the second one shows up right behind it. You make sure you're spacing between the time to the truck, so you're giving yourself adequate time to discharge the first truck, get that material placed before the second truck shows up. Protect the concrete surface. a lot of people don't know this, but you know, everything that you're talking about, especially your form work, will absorb the heat from the sunlight. So your forms will be warm. So make sure you cool them off, saturate them, spray them down real quick. Pre-wet the substrate so you don't get a sink when you start pouring concrete, that it just starts to suck the moisture out of the ground, out of the concrete mix into the ground, especially if you're not using a vapor barrier. Uh, Weeds, basically, you have to make sure that you, all of this here retains moisture within the concrete, helping it to hydrate. That's going to help minimize any cracking that you may get. You see a lot of guys who may end up fogging their concrete pour areas, which is a great way to go about, especially in those hotter temperatures, especially where you're going to be pouring concrete 3, 4 in the morning. If you go with a light mist fog, that keeps everything going. The guys will appreciate it, and the concrete will really appreciate it. Shield it from direct sunlight. Obviously, it's why guys are pouring more and more in the early hours before sunrise. Use sunshades if you have to. Make sure curing is done to develop optimal strength, less cracks. As soon as you can get the bleed, as soon as the bleed water comes off the concrete, get on it with your curing compound. Can't have a concrete conversation in today's market without talking type 1L cement. It basically has replaced fly ash within the concrete ready mix industry, which is basically it's a PLC, type 1L, which basically means it has a higher concentrate of limestone within the concrete. It basically is a design mix similar to what when they had fly ash entered into the concrete, it replaced some of the cement. Now the extra limestone is actually replacing some of the cement. And some of the issues that you have with Portland cement, with this blended cement, you can actually add 5% of extra limestone to the concrete mix and reduce the amount of Portland by that 5%. So basically what you're doing is you are replacing that material, clinker, which is basically what makes how you get your Portland. And then you have your gypsum and then the limestone. Well, what you're seeing now here in this blend mix is where we're increasing, up to 10% more of the limestone within the product here. And to get this extra 10%, they're taking a lot of that clinker and they're basically dissolving it by basically grinding it up to actually put in place of the concrete into Portland. So the problem that we're seeing on sites with the type 1L, you got less bleed water. Limestone is very porous and it sucks up a lot of moisture. So it basically is going to help. It's going to suck up a lot of that bleed water that you typically thought you'd have. So you're going to have to be very conscientious of whether cracks, tears can occur while you're finishing it. You don't want to over finish it or burn it with your trowel. You're going to get a low early strength gain. Typically, you see a lot of guys will end up getting on type 1L cement a little bit too soon, sealing off that top surface before the concrete has enough height, before hydration actually comes throughout the slab. That can be a situation with type 1L cement. And this isn't an exact science across the board. If you're doing jobs at different areas within the country with different ready mix producers, this situation actually comes into play where the limestone levels will change from basically producer to producer. So solutions. Well, field observations of potential problems have been, for basically a variety of new solutions. what do you have to do? Well, there's evaporation retarders out there now. There's finishing aids. You got when you're putting densifiers in place here, curing compounds in place. These have basically now you have to start paying more closer attention to this. Evaporation retarders are, I think, are one of the biggest influences within the system here. Typically was something that was kept just around the site for in case of. Well, now it's becoming every job is a need to have on site. Finishing aids are also coming into place here with helping finishing concrete prior to applying curing compounds or densifiers. So specifically, evaporation retarders were not specifically designed for type 1L. They just unfortunately, I won't say it's a necessary evil. The evaporation retarders have been made life plausible by using type 1L cement, by making it a little bit easier to work with the type 1L cement, and actually the reduction of workability from the type 1L cement. So basically it helps extend the workability, gives you a little bit more time, especially with the finishing aid. The finishing aids are one of the newer issues that we've had. It's come in, it's like a pre-curing type material to actually help finish between placement and curing. It just helps you actually maintain your concrete, brings the paste up, a nice creamy paste to the surface of the concrete, bringing the bleed water, making it all that much easier to access, and actually give you a nice surface on the concrete. So what do you do now with all this information? Well, here's we got you covered with it. So let's go over it real quick. You come in, you pour and screed. You're going to come in, pour your concrete. You're going to strike it off. You're then going to actually apply your evaporation retarder on top of it. Do not work it into the surface. Let the material work. It's going to mix with any of the bleed water that's going to come in and actually help trap that water on the surface of the concrete. This will change a little bit of the water cement ratio, but it will trap the bleed water within the slab. Next up is let the evaporation retarder evaporate, like your bleed water. Basically, just give it a little bit of time. You get that nice sheen, wet surface will turn into that flat mat material. Timing will depend on job site conditions. If it increases wind, obviously it's gonna evaporate a little bit quicker. In sunlight, it's gonna basically increase or reduce the evaporation time. Then come back in, float it, strike it off, make sure you're level with the top of it, let the bleed water evaporate. Once the evaporation is complete, float and finish again. Apply your finishing aid, then finish trowel. Strike it all off. And at that point, you can either apply your densifier or your curing compound, depending on what product you actually have to apply next within the project. So with that being said, we have resources available for all of these products on our site. Our TDSs are available. If you go to DaytonSuperior.com, type in evaporation retarder or J74, you can get into the quick hitters on the J74, what it is. You can pull up a TDS, SDS, and any of the data sheets that are associated with this. You can also there's also little tidbits on recommendations for hot weather, cold weather, whatever. And remember, if you need that ACI 205R, send us a quick note at training@DaytonSuperior.com and we will forward that off to you. Also, Here's a typical quick guide. We have guides available for evaporation retarders. It's one of the newer product items that we've got up on our website. This is just gives you some do's and don'ts and quick little hitters to actually help your project move a little bit quicker, easier, and so forth. And as I said before, we have SDS, TDSs, and actually any of the chemical safety data sheets available for you. We also have a product search if you're looking for an assistance for a specification and or compliance or a basically a similar product from a different manufacturer that specified you what is the Dayton version of that product. We can actually give that for a cross reference, so we can make that completely available for you. And once again, we are members of ACI, so we actually work heavily with ACI. Types for 1L cement with different characteristics. What type 1L cement is, I don't want to say doing to the industry because it's something that's been around for a while, but a lot of contractors are just realizing it's coming to attrition for them, that they've actually got to handle that. And as always, on our website, you have actually who to get a hold of, getting a hold of any of our concrete experts, any of our chemical people in place here. You just click on the region of the country that you want, look at who the salesman is, his cell phone number is attached to it. So you get a quick, easy contact. If you need to get code of customer service, it's also on there for you. And if you need additional training, scan the QR code right here. This will actually take you to Heidi's and my page that will actually take your information, give you a form to fill out and request any of the training if you're looking for something more in person, like a lunch and learn, a custom training, AIA, an engineered class for PDHs, or an in-person virtual. And if there's any questions, please use the chat functionality within the system, and we'll go from there. So I think we got a couple of seconds here. We'll give if there's any questions.
Okay, so I see a couple things in chat. Sorry guys, I was going to try to look at it, but I didn't want to bug Chuck because we're sharing a mouse here. I'm not in the office. The email address, Mr. Chester, we will go ahead and send you that ACI bulletin. I'm actually one of the things I do is I put the resources with the webinar when I post it, and that'll be on there as well. But I will make a note to send you a copy of that ACI bulletin. Or, yeah, you can send Chuck a direct email there. I'm sure he won't mind.
Yep, all right.
So how has type 1 You're welcome, Mr. Chester. I keep saying Mr. Chester. So I've got another question here. How has type 1L impacted hot weather placements?
Well, it's actually changed the consistency of the chemical makeup of the ready mix, that's especially coming in from the ready mix company. You're seeing more and more chemicals being added to the concrete, basically to allow for workability, flowability, consistency, and actually enabling the concrete to hydrate properly within that realm. It's also gone the other way too, where we've seen it come in where people didn't know what they were getting with the type 1L, and you get decreased work times with it. You get trouble with it, guys can't screed it up. You're tearing the concrete surface when you're trying to steel trowel it, just because the water cement ratio or the water actually, there's not much bleed water within the system because the limestone is actually sucking it up. So yeah, there has been a lot of changes, but a lot of it all has to deal primarily and the ready mix industry has really attacked this really well. And they've actually got a bunch of different guidelines for blending of the concrete systems.
Fantastic. Is there any other questions out there? Well, if you come to think of anything, please, you can email us directly or at training@daytonsuperior.com. That goes to both of us anyway. We'll figure it out for you. It's a little easier to remember than my crazy last name, or I guess Chuck is Chuck Hoke. He's easy. Yeah, I don't think we have any other questions, Chuck. So thank you for a wonderful Training Tuesday to Chuck and to all of you who joined us. And we will talk with you next week. And we're going to be doing next week, excuse me. We'll be doing bridge deck overview. So get out there and sign up for that. And I hope to see you next Tuesday. Bye now.